know there's economic turmoil.
The trade deal is top priority.
We don't need Britain to become a kind of Singapore.
Labour doesn't want to talk about Brexit, and the government says, well, we'd rather keep our cards well hidden.
There's the big uncertainty of what Brexit really means for business.
The UK economy is a big, baffling set of questions, and you can find most of them here on a Monopoly board. Take this election. It's been about tax, about transportation, about the way we manage our utility companies, property prices, developing housing, mortgages and consumer debt. But most of all, it's been about Brexit, the big question mark in our national economy. The challenge for the political leaders is not just showing they can come up with a good deal, but also convincing us that they can deliver it.
There's going to be a deal.
There is going to be a deal. Would you leave Europe without a deal?
We will make sure there's a deal.
We're in there to get the best deal for the United Kingdom. And actually, I'm optimistic about that.
So let's start our story here in Leadenhall Market in the city of London. This place feels to me like a symbol of how the British love trading. There's been a market here for 600 or 700 years, with people making and selling things to each other and to the rest of the world. But over the centuries, the UK economy has changed. And that's why these days this lovely old market is overshadowed by skyscrapers built and occupied by bankers. These buildings cost a dizzying amount. One of them has just sold for more than £1 billion. The British economy is growing, but at a slower rate than in recent years.
What we're seeing in the economy is still good growth, but there's obviously a lot of uncertainty and there are a lot of changing dynamics. We're seeing inflation rising, we're seeing the wage gap, we're seeing sterling weaker. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on, and then there's the big uncertainty of what Brexit really means for business.
Brexit and the challenge of uncertainty, these are the themes you hear across the British economy right now, not least when city financiers get together for a quick drink.
Brexit is a big thing for us. It's adding a whole load of cost into our business. It's going to make us a lot less profitable than we'd like to be.
There's too much scaremongering going on. We, as a nation, we're allowed to do things wrong every now and then, and whether it's wrong or right, we'll still thrive.
It's the uncertainty surrounding Brexit. There's a lot of unknowns if you look at the global economy.
Going into this election, Brexit is the most important thing shaping our economy. It affects jobs, inflation, investment, everything. You might imagine it would be the dominant political theme. So why don't politicians talk about it a lot more?
Labour doesn't want to talk about Brexit, so it's trying to talk a lot about the health service, national utilities, prices and so on, and therefore it's not forced the government to set out its stall very fully. And the government, rightly from its point of view, says, well, we'd rather keep our cards well hidden at this point, so they aren't volunteering.
While the economists and financiers and bankers here fret, there is another industry that's looking at these trade negotiations with more concern than probably any other. And that's an industry that's got nothing to do with skyscrapers. Early morning in Devon. Richard Tucker's farm has 230 cows. It's been in his family for generations, and from here, agriculture is just about all that you can see.
Got neighbours over here, dairy farm over here.
The milk that comes out of here is sold through a cooperative that reaches across Europe. Now, this all feels a long way from London's bankers and the tumult of the election, but here the talk is still about uncertainty.
Like everyone sort of thinks of milk coming just from the farmer down the road. It is a global industry these days, so any sort of barriers to trade or actual extra costs to trade are all going to get passed down to us, I'm afraid. That's sort of my feeling, because governments aren't going to want to see food prices rise, I don't think.
No. Nervousness is natural. It's how you react to it. For some, whoever wins the election, they'll have the opportunity to reshape the economy.
Brexit, I think, will provide its challenges to the rural economy, farming, but I think from those challenges there'll be opportunities. I like to think that enthusiastic farmers, that I sort of hope I fall into that category of, then we can make a stab of it.
Number 1159, shown by Mr H and Mr A Pierce.
Down the road, the Devon County Show, a celebration of farming and rural living. This show hasn't really changed much for decades, but now there is something new. Anxiety about what the future holds, about the effect of a trade deal, or what happens if there's no deal at all. The head of the Farmers' Union is here, gauging what his members want from the next government.
The trade deal is top priority. We export 38% of our sheep meat from the UK into the European Union. Should tariffs be imposed on our trade into Europe, it will have a devastating effect, particularly for the sheep industry. The logistics of actually border checks, certification, that could add greatly to the cost of exports and imports coming into the UK.
Can't finish this first, need for a second. Nick's only got a few blows behind.
Use your left hand to lift that wall up, Nick. Don't push it up,
just there in the left shoulder, so he won't be long either.
It's reckoned most farmers voted Remain, but what we found was plenty with an enthusiasm for a break, who want the next government to worry less about doing new deals and more about untangling British industry from the existing Brussels regulations.
Here we are, give them a round of applause.
We were told before the vote all the sky was going to fall in if we voted to leave. The truth of the matter is that sky hasn't fallen in, and we're actually doing quite nicely. A lot of the agricultural products have gone up because the pound's got a bit weaker, which has got to be a good thing.
Coming out of European market or out of Europe is a key factor really, because I think once we establish our own independence, we'll be a stronger country for it.
Well, food and farming is big business in this country. It's worth well over £100 billion a year to the economy. 70% of the UK is covered with farmland. But more than that, it's about the role it plays in our lives. Now, compare it to, let's say, banking. If you took complex financial derivatives out of that, most of us wouldn't notice. But if you start to fiddle with the food chain, you'll get a lot of complaints quite quickly. So could that happen? Well, nobody knows more about selling us food than this man.
I've worked in the food industry for 35 years. The supply chains which deliver our food, the fresh, healthy, safe, tasty, great value for money food that we have in the UK, have all been constructed over the last 40 years or so ago by our main grocery supermarkets, all entirely within a structure that was controlled, dictated, set by our membership of Europe. That's not going to be possible to unravel quickly.
At the moment, British goods can be taken into Europe and sold anywhere without hindrance. But if tariffs are imposed, that would change. It could mean things stopping at the border, even reversing some of our trade with Europe. That could affect just about everything, food to banking to the most sophisticated high-tech businesses. Like this one. GE is one of the world's leading manufacturers, based in most of the world's countries, making products for aviation, healthcare, energy. It employs 20,000 people in the UK, including here in Cardiff, where the factory runs 24 hours a day repairing aircraft engines. An American company with a big British presence. It's had to deal with Trump, Brexit, and now a general election. How hard is it managing a company when politicians on both sides of the Atlantic are throwing curveballs at you?
We know there's political turbulence. We know there's economic turbulence. We know there's great volatility in the world. I think we're quite good at managing it because we've just been in there. And the messages that I give to the government here and my colleagues in other countries give to their governments is help create the demand, help create the market. We will compete. We have to be competitive. It is, but if we can win competitively, then we'll bring investment and jobs and technology. And that's what countries of every colour and type want.
Jobs are the heartbeat of an economy. Britain's unemployment rate is now at its lowest level for nearly half a century. But there are those who fear leaving Europe will mean less protection for workers. So what does the trade union movement want from the next government?
What we don't need in that deal is a race to the bottom. We don't need Britain to become a kind of Singapore, offshore tax haven and deregulated haven on the edge of Europe. What we want is a recognition that both Britain and Europe need to thrive.
Cast your mind back to the referendum. The day before, over 1,000 business leaders signed an open letter urging us all to vote Remain. The flip side, there were frankly very few big business men and women backing Leave. But one of them is the man who runs this pub and 900 others.
Early on in the campaign, it emerged that not only had Brexiteers not changed their mind, but a third or a half of Remainers thought that since the Remain side had lost, we should proceed with Brexit.
In this election, everyone has competed to say that they're the party to strike the best trade deal. But are we kidding ourselves that one really can be done in so short a time?
I don't think there's any possibility at all.
There's an awful lot to do.
The time frame is going to be very challenging.
It would be extremely optimistic.
I've yet to find anyone who thinks that a fully loaded trade deal will be done between this country and the EU within the 2-year time frame. Do you?
I think no, and thank God for that, because I think we're better off if we say to the Europeans, listen guys, we're happy to trade on World Trade Organization rules. If I was negotiating, that's what I'd do. So if you want to have a free trade deal, give us a bell. If not, we'll all get on with organising trade deals with other countries.
If you've ever played Monopoly, you'll know this. It always lasts longer than you planned. Every time you think it's coming to an end, it goes on and on. Whoever wins this election will have a very long game ahead of them. Adam Parsons, Sky News.